Got a 2011 Crown Victoria with a lack of power complaint, check engine light, reported P0420 P0430 catalyst efficiency codes, oxygen sensor. I've got the little $20 code reader here. We're going to check codes, stored codes. P0161, can you get that on the screen there? Is it legible?
Yes.
P0161 O2 sensor heater circuit bank 2 sensor 2. P2272 O2 sensor signal stuck lean bank 2 sensor 2. So apparently we've got a problem with the bank 2 sensor 2 oxygen sensor,
Which is new.
and it's a new. So we've got a new bank 2 sensor 2 oxygen sensor, and we're still getting codes for bank 2 sensor 2 is stuck lean and has heater circuit fault. So new sensor did not help. We're going to now look at live data. Before we get going, the vehicle's just idling here. It's fully up to temperature. It's warm, all warmed up. Okay, let's get a view of the screen as we go down and look at the data. Okay, this is the data list. We're just gonna go scroll on through and take a look. Everything looks normal thus far. Fuel trims are looking pretty good. That looks all ideal. Map sensor looks pretty good. Spark advance is all normal. Intake air temperature looks normal. Mass airflow sensor, that looks about right because it's measuring in pounds per second. So that's displayed in a different way than some people might be used to. Throttle position all looks good. Okay, so oxygen sensors, this is what I really want to look at with my generic little code reader. We could do most everything with this little code reader. Oxygen sensor, bank 1 sensor 1, we see voltage activity. Now an oxygen sensor operates from 0 volts to 1 volt, and we see it's basically swinging from almost 0 to almost 1, and that's about normal. We're in neutral here, so let me rev that up. We see that the oxygen sensor pegs rich when I stab the throttle, and so that kind of proves that that sensor's working. The downstream sensor on bank 1, it at least is doing something. It's kind of hovering towards the lower end, but it does spike high when it should, so I know that sensor's working and I can trust it. Bank 2 sensor 1, again, this one should be switching fairly rapidly from 0 to 1, and it is. And it's also responding the way that I would expect it to. And here's our suspect. Bank 2 sensor 2 is stuck 000, and it's really not doing anything. So this suggests we have an open circuit completely, or shorted wiring, shorted to ground most likely. So I think that's where we're probably going to be concentrating for the oxygen sensor codes, but most likely that would not cause a lack of power concern. So I think we have something else going on. And more or less everything else is looking pretty good. Okay, no other concerns there. I'm gonna go back into data. Okay, so a preliminary look at the data shows us that we have a bank 2 sensor 2 oxygen sensor that's not functioning correctly. We do have a lack of power concern and a catalyst code. The code wasn't present because the codes were cleared before, of course, but this is what I'm told. So now we're going to go take a road test and just evaluate engine performance while I've got the code reader monitoring data if I need to look at it. But so we're going to just get into the lane here, and then I'm going to do a wide open throttle performance test. Now this is a police Interceptor Crown Victoria, and this thing is not very fast, so it's really struggling to accelerate to me, it feels like it's got either a clogged exhaust or a complete lack of fuel. So let me try and accelerate again. Just doesn't want to go. Doesn't want to go unless I let off the throttle. So I'm going to pull off and look at some data real quick. Okay, let's get on our code reader. And I would like to look at load percentage, but more importantly, I want to look at oxygen sensors for this acceleration test. So bank 1, sensor 1, we know we can trust that sensor. Here, if you want to hold that and review the data while I do the acceleration test. I have to zoom out a little. Something like that. Okay. I'm pulling onto the road. And we're doing a wide open throttle. And it looks like that oxygen sensor pegged up to 900 millivolts or so, which is a rich condition. And let's take a look at bank 2 also when we do that. I'm going to pull off again. Okay, this is bank 2 sensor 1, wide open throttle acceleration test. And again, both banks are pegging rich when they should, so I don't think that we have a lack of fuel. I think that we probably have a clogged exhaust system. Okay, let me stop again. Okay, so to me, on the scan tool data, it indicates that we do not have a lack of fuel. We have an engine that just cannot breathe. And that's what it sounds like to me, is that the engine just cannot breathe. I can really hear it bogging and it just can't accelerate. So one little trick I've learned over the years is that if you do a wide open throttle acceleration test and you suspect a plugged exhaust, you throw the transmission into neutral, and if the engine fails to speed up any faster, then it almost confirms that it's a clogged exhaust. So I'm going to try that now. Here we go. Okay. And look at that. It doesn't want to accelerate, but I don't know how much of that is the computer doing that or if it's just that the engine can't breathe. So I don't know that that works on all vehicles, but to me, I think we need to go back to base, take some oxygen sensors out, unscrew them from the exhaust and do another acceleration test, or we need to unbolt the white pipe from the manifolds and do it that way. Either way, we'll confirm whether we have a clogged exhaust or not, and it might sound good too.
Center the wheel over the block.
Turn to the left a little. Yeah, that's good.
Much more for the tire to be center.
Okay, under the hood here, ladies and gentlemen, the plan here is that we need to loosen the exhaust and do another wide open throttle acceleration test. There's not much access. You can kind of see that upstream oxygen sensor right there. So you could unscrew that oxygen sensor, or you could undo the 2 bolts for the white pipe. I think we're going to undo the white pipe because recently the manifolds have been taken off, resealed, and had anti-seize on the bolts. So I think the white pipe bolts are probably our safest course of action here.
Shit, I'm gonna have to do this. 15 millimeter. So I'll give it like a 1/4 inch gap. Come on, baby.
So what were you saying about it was worth it to put anti-seize on the bolts?
On everything, yes. And I ran, whenever I do exhaust, I always make sure I run a tap and die on any hole or any stud.
Yep. And this vehicle, being a Crown a police Interceptor, it does have a true dual exhaust, so we can kind of unbolt one bank at a time. So we're gonna start with bank 2, the suspect bank.
Driver's side.
And likely what I suspect is we're gonna have an immediate engine performance improvement.
Ready to
Thus,
roll?
yeah. So now we're gonna go take another road test with that cat loosened up. And I think that we're gonna have an immediate improvement. And that would probably prove that we have a clogged cat on bank 2, but we do still have some oxygen sensor codes. Where's that sensor back there? Right there.
Watch your fingers. Coming down.
That sensor right there. So I think we need to do some wiring diagnosis on that circuit also.
Yeah, I always get it.
All right, start her up. This is bank 2. I didn't really hear a gap that's opened up. There we go. Okay, bank 2 is loosened up.
Oh, back to normal.
Yeah, I'm gonna say instantaneous performance improvement. All right, so that basically confirms bank 2 catalyst is clogged. We need to probably just replace it. I definitely feel an engine imbalance now that we have one bank loosened up and one not. So I didn't feel that imbalance before. I just think that's because bank 2 is now breathing a lot better than bank 1. But okay, we're gonna head back to base. We've got some wiring diagnosis to do on the bank 2 sensor 2 oxygen sensor still, because it's not producing a signal at all, and it's got a heater code that immediately comes back. So that just suggests we immediately have some sort of circuit fault. Also has a brand new oxygen sensor, so that did not fix the problem. Okay. Driving through Snob Hill.
Nope, I ain't loosening up.
All right, well, we don't have to do that side.
I don't want to break it.
Yeah, we're thinking about loosening up both sides, and just simply because it's probably going to sound way cooler, but not really necessary at this point, because I think we've confirmed bank 2 is the problem. So we're not going to risk breaking the bolts. So we're going to move on to the wiring test now. From here.
I expand the bolt, and I think I put new bolts on it to be truthful about it.
Okay, so from here, we're going to go grab a laptop or something and bring up some wiring schematics so that we can properly test the oxygen sensor circuits. While I'm here, let's take a little sneak peek at some future video projects. We've got the 1969 Ford F350, 1996 F250, 1993 Bronco, and back there in blue, there's a little bit of a sneak peek video on that one. I believe that was a 1970 F250. Okay, so taking a look at the schematic here, oxygen sensor, bank 2, sensor 2 right there. Oh my. Okay. Anyways, so oxygen sensor, bank 2, sensor 2 right there. We're going to concentrate on the P0161 heater circuit code right now, and that little squiggle is our heater element. We've got a wire going from the sensor to the PCM. That would be the ground signal from the PCM, and the red wire goes on up here to that fuse, which is hot and run. So we've got a fuse here that is hot and run. Hot and run, this red wire comes down to the bank 2, sensor 2 oxygen sensor. That's our key on power to the heater element, and that little squiggle is the element. That yellow wire, or tannin yellow wire, then goes from the sensor to the PCM. The PCM is going to be providing most likely a pulsing ground to control that heater element. So we're concentrating on the P0161 bank 2 sensor 2 heater circuit code right now, and then we're going to be moving on to the code that was stuck lean. So signal stuck lean, that would be that violet and light green wire. So we may find something when we're down there already, but right now he's disconnecting the connector, and we're gonna at least put probably a test light across these two wires and see if anything happens. Here?
Yes, it was pulled out over 40%.
Okay, so hold on, let's get down here. He can tell us what he found as he was going to go disconnect that connector. What'd you find?
Found this connector right here going to this one here. The white one was pulled out about 40%.
So it was not fully clicked in?
No, it was not. It was not clicked in whatsoever.
Okay, so we're going to fully seat that connector and then clear codes and see what comes back. So we may have just found the problem right there, and we may not need to do any further circuit testing, but it may be a good idea to also just show a circuit test and show what normal operation looks like anyway, since we're down here and we've already started this video. So
I want to sit here.
okay, so what I would do is turn the key on and erase the codes with the code reader first. We already know that we had a complete lack of activity voltage-wise, so bank 2 sensor 2 had 000 for all signals. So now that we fully seated the connector down there, I bet we're going to have a signal and a heater circuit code. Normally, if there's a heater circuit fault, the code will come back immediately. So
You want to clear
now,
the codes?
yeah, erase codes, and then we'll turn the key off and start it up and see if anything comes back, and then we'll check oxygen sensor data while we're at it. Okay.
It usually comes back after a short drive.
Oh yeah. Okay, why don't you go into live data and bring up that bank 2 sensor 2 oxygen sensor voltage data. Yep, scroll down a little further. That's bank 1.
Sensor 2.
Yep. Keep going. And now look at that. Bank 2 sensor 2 now has activity. Although it does seem to be switching a fair amount, but we already concluded that we do have a faulty bank 2 catalyst. Now what was the question?
Why do I still have on bank 1 sensor 2 0% 99.2?
I would just ignore that. That's just some OBD2 data that doesn't really have much of a use as far as I know. At least I don't make use of it. But I think he was asking earlier is what, so now we have a signal, yes, so now that means that that signal wire is actually doing something. Okay, so ended up finding that the connector here was just not fully clicked in, and that was the cause of most likely both of our P0161 heater circuit code and the signal stuck lean code. Be sure to test the test light before you do any electrical tests, because you need to know you can actually trust the tool. Okay, so an ohms measurement on this test light, we've got approximately 39 ohms. An oxygen sensor heater is probably about 3 ohms, so this might be a little too much, but the goal here is to see if the light will light when it's across that O2 heater circuit, and that would prove that your PCM and your wiring and your power supply is okay. And we're using drop light technology today. I've noticed while I was down here, we've got a little bit of melting activity going on the upstream sensor. Don't know if that's actually causing any problems, but we may want to tie that away from the exhaust. This is the Bank 2 Sensor 2 harness connector. This sensor's new, so if we wanted to do an ohms measurement, get a resistance measurement on those 2 white wires to get a known good heater measurement. And then where's that connector? I think it's way up there in a little hell hole. So that may be difficult. Okay, actually that's not the connector, it's back here. So that won't be too bad to get to and do some testing. Okay, and I'm doing this three-handed while he finds me that old oxygen sensor so we can get a comparison. This is a new aftermarket sensor, measured about 5 ohms resistance on that heater circuit across the 2 white wires. So the test light I'm going to be using is like 40 ohms almost, so I think that might be a little too much, but hopefully it does light and proves out the circuit. All right, you want to turn that key on for me?
Yes.
We're doing the heater circuit test now. See if the light lights. I'm not really worried about damaging the PCM because this actually has more resistance than a normal oxygen sensor.
Key position on.
Keys on, look at that, the light lit. So that proves that the circuit and the PCM driver is okay. And that would have been the PCM self-test to immediately detect that faulty circuit. Okay, so that confirms the wiring and the PCM driver is okay. That would get you diagnosed on the P0161 heater circuit code for Bank 2 Sensor 2. The P2272, I can't remember the number on that one. The signal circuit stuck lean. We would have to really disconnect this end and disconnect the PCM end to properly diagnose that. Otherwise, you could probably get tricky with it and short some wiring around and verify that your scan tool data was reading high and low as you expected it to. That's kind of one way to do it. But to do a really complete diagnosis on that circuit, you would want to disconnect both ends and test resistance end to end for not having excessive resistance and not being shorted to battery voltage or shorted to ground in any way. So I think if we can, we'll show that. Otherwise, we'll just be done here and put it back together. So. Okay, thus far we've proven with the resistance test that the oxygen sensor is good. It had about 5 or 6 ohms. We've proven that we have power and ground on the red wire and the tan and yellow wire. So we know the fuse is good, the wiring is good, the sensor's good, the wiring back to the PCM is good. So that proves out P0161. We've solved that. The problem was that the connector was not fully seated. Also, that was causing our lack of signal on the violet and light green wire to cause our P2272 code signal stuck lean. But we are going to go ahead and disconnect both ends and show you what a normal good circuit would test like, just in case you need that information. And I was going to say that after reconnecting the connector here, we looked at the scan tool data, and I've already seen enough. I know that I've seen that the signal looks normal to me because it's switching normally from 0 to 1 volt. So that proves to me that the sensor's working and the circuitry is okay. But like I said, we're going to continue with the wiring test, disconnect both ends, and just show you what a normal result would look like, just in case anyone needs that information. So we're going to disconnect the oxygen sensor, already disconnected. We're going to disconnect the PCM connector and test this tan and yellow wire end to end, and then test for shorts to power, shorts to ground. Okay, so here's a view of the PCM connector. We're going to go after C175T, terminal 25. violet and light green wire. Disconnecting the battery before we disconnect the PCM connectors. I'm not sure which connector is which, but I think if we go off the terminal numbering, we can just kind of figure out which ones it can't be. That one probably looks a little too small, so I think it's probably going to be this one or this one. Okay, battery is disconnected. It is now safe to disconnect the PCM. Be careful with the old heat-baked plastic. I like to disconnect all of the connectors and just see if there's any water intrusion or dust, like see the needles in here. So we probably needed to clean this out anyway. Okay, so I'm not exactly sure which connector is which. I see that it is a 50 terminal connector. Terminal 1's over here, 1, 11, 12, 23, 24, 34, 35, 46, etc. So I'm going to go look on the back of that connector. Okay, it's definitely not this connector, because if you look on the back, it's got identification numbers, and you can see that the terminal numbering goes way beyond 50. So it's not one of that. It's not that one. It's one of these two, because both of these are 50 terminal connectors. So I think what we need to do from here is just verify that the correct terminal has the right wiring color and further confirm with the ohms test that we are on the right connector. Okay, I don't think it's this middle connector here, because if we zoom in on that terminal there that says 24, we're after terminal 25, and the 25th terminal on this connector is empty, so that's not the one we're after. Go over to this end connector, terminal 24. There's the violet and light green wire we're after on terminal 25. So this is the connector, it's this one to test that circuit. Okay, so we're gonna do a wiring test on the PCM connector. This is definitely not the proper tool. We've got a thin little paper clip. I'm not at the shop today, we're just at the garage, alternate garage site. And I've barely got it stuck in there. You really don't want to stab something like this into the front. I've just barely got it stuck in there. Just barely touching it to make electrical continuity. So, we don't have enough, don't have a long enough we do not have long enough test leads on the meter itself, so we're gonna add these extension test leads, but I would like to measure how much resistance does the test lead itself add to the test, because that can cause you some discrepancies. So minimal. The test lead wire extension itself is adding 1 ohm or less.
20
so
foot. It's 20 foot.
Yeah, 20 foot of wiring extension only adds about 1 ohm to your test, but that's pretty significant if your specification is only 1 ohm or less or whatever. So just so you know, the test leads themselves are adding about 1 ohm. Okay, so violet and light green wire is on that terminal of the connector. Again, do not shove anything in the connector. This paper clip actually fits really loosely in there, so I'm not worried about spreading out the terminal. I've got one end of my test lead connected down here, and we're going to go connect the other end on the PCM and do a continuity test. Okay, this is the other end of my test lead. Basically, this end goes down to where I just showed on the oxygen sensor connector, and we are now doing a continuity test from one end to the other with the ohms meter. So if there is continuity between those two leads, it will display something. And we already know we're getting about 1 ohm just from the test leads. Okay, so now when I touch this red lead, we should get pretty low resistance. That would prove our wiring is okay. And yeah, it's basically reading no more than what the test lead itself is adding. So that's a perfect end-to-end test. And then from here, I would like to test this wiring for a short to either B+ or ground. So to do that, I would touch this end here. Actually, I could just leave it connected to that circuit. Okay, so we're still connected to the circuit. We're still connected to the wiring itself. I'm gonna get that out of there before it just falls somewhere random. And let's go over here to the battery. I want this to be completely open. I don't want it to read anything when I touch the battery, B+. So that we're testing continuity to B+. Absolutely no continuity, that's what I want to see. And testing to battery negative. Again, no short to ground. So that's a normal circuit test on the signal return wire. The signal from the oxygen sensor, bank 2, sensor 2. Okay, so end-to-end resistance from the bank 2, sensor 2, oxygen sensor to the PCM connector here. We had basically less than half of an ohm, less than an ohm, end-to-end, and then continuity on that wire to battery positive should be infinite. We had infinite, that's a good test result, and we should also have infinite to battery ground to indicate that that wiring is not touching anywhere it shouldn't, and it's good end to end. So one more wire, there's 4 wires on the oxygen sensor. One more wire that you should test is the ground, and that signal return actually goes through the PCM. So we need to have the battery reconnected to do that. Okay, so we're gonna reconnect everything and get prepped to show that one final test, and then we're done here. All right, PCM's reconnected. He's gonna reconnect the battery and tighten up the terminal, and then we're gonna go down below. Okay, while he's tightening up the battery terminal there, back here on the schematic, we are now moving on to the gray and red wire. This is going to be your signal return or the ground wire to the oxygen sensor, so that the signal wire has a clean reference. And if we follow this wire from the sensor, we see that it joins up, and this is the signal return for multiple components, and then it eventually goes back to the PCM. So the PCM is the signal return. It's basically a filtered ground. So what I would do is a continuity test, ohms measurement on that wire from here to battery ground, and just see what I get. It should be very little. All right, I've moved the test probe to that bottom right terminal, and that is our signal return to the PCM. So now I'm going to roll back up there and test continuity from here to battery negative through the PCM. Okay, this is the other end of my test wire from the oxygen sensor, bank 2, sensor 2, and so I may need to turn the key on for this. So let me go turn the key on. Key's in there.
Yes.
My thing might have fallen out down there. Yeah, it fell out. Okay, my test lead just fell out of the hole, so we're gonna do that again. Okay, so other end of the test wire is connected to the ohm meter. We are measuring 44 ohms to ground, which seems a little high, although it is going back through the PCM. So one more thing that I would do. Okay, the key was actually on for that test. So that was about 44 ohms with the key on. Key off, now I'm seeing what I was expecting to see, and remember, we're getting about 1 ohm through the test wire itself. So this is actually good to me. It should be 10 ohms or less. So that confirms that our wiring is okay. So that confirms that our wiring is okay. That is the instructional how to test oxygen sensor wiring. Everything that you've been shown here also applies to those other oxygen sensors. You just need to apply the different wiring colors, whatever, because each oxygen sensor is going to have different wiring. But that's how to test bank 2 sensor 2 on a 2011 Crown Victoria. Other vehicles may apply. Really, the test methods that you've seen here apply to just about any vehicle. So we had a lack of power, complete lack of power, that ended up being a bank 2 catalyst that is completely clogged. We unbolted it and found an immediate performance improvement, and then we did the wiring test to confirm the P0161 and P2272. That was actually caused by an oxygen sensor connector that was not fully seated, and once we connected that, we verified the heater, and the heater code had not come back, and the bank 2 sensor 2 signal went from being all zeros and just stuck there to it had operational values between 0 and 1 like it should have. So that was the cause of that. And then we just went ahead and showed you the wiring test anyway, just in case anyone needs that information. So that's all we got for now.
Okay, well, we're here at my garage, the garage that I taught my son how to do about 20% of what he does now, and he's blossomed up to this great mechanic, which helped me on my car, which I was having major problems with it, but walking through and watching all his videos, this and everything, it really enlightened me on all this electronic stuff. So hopefully it helps you too.
Yeah, that's why I do this. I make videos to help somebody who is out there willing to help themselves. They just don't have the resources. So this is Dad's Garage channel. I'm Dad, this is my dad, and this is his garage. Thanks for watching.